There's a lot of people who have done that exact same thing, and not many of them have all the access to their fingers anymore. My teacher was one of the final students of Segovia before Segovia passed away.
What was his name?
His name was Philip de Fremery. Segovia had these exercises, that he would have. I don't know if de Fremery transcribed them or what, but I remember he had this giant X across like 2 bars of it, and I was like, what? Obviously that's just like, is that too hard? Is that a challenge or whatever? And he's like, no. What he didn't realize is these exercises were stretching the hand down the middle of the hand. When done too much, because of that severance, it can actually cause damage over time. So growing up with bad technique and stuff, my eyes were really opened by a lot of these examples that my teacher was showing me for this kind of stuff, and the actual danger of even something as simple as doing a specific kind of exercise, that you would think could be good for you, could do lasting damage to you. I grew up with a really bad habit. A lot of guitarists have this habit of not using their pinky enough. And I told my teacher that I was going to do a bunch of exercises that only utilized that held down like a finger that I would use a lot, and only utilize that. And obviously he told me, well, there's a lot of people who have done that exact same thing, and not many of them have all the access to their fingers anymore, because they've done lasting damage to their fingers by doing that. Because what happens is your hand needs to move naturally, and if you start cutting that off, you start doing damage.
What do you think might be the biggest cause of injury?
Lack of education. I think, because I feel like it's hard. I mean, your body sends out warning signs, right? Like when something's wrong, your body's going to tell you, usually before you injure yourself, that something's wrong. If that's the case, either the person might not be educated enough to know that, that's something that could damage you, stop doing that. Or they could feel like, oh, well, every musician has had to overcome hardships. This is just one of them. So they they push through and think that this is just another one of those hardships, and then they hurt themselves.
No pain, no gain, and suffering for your art kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, something like that.
How common do you think it is for a musician to develop an injury?
I feel like a lot of injuries from musicians go kind of unreported, as much as I would believe that they would happen often. Especially for a guitarist, carpal tunnel in this day and age can be, might be from guitar or might be from, using a keyboard for many hours a day. I think it's incredibly common and underreported. And because of that, there could be a lot more measures to lessen injuries, but that's probably what I would guess.
This almost sounds like you've actually watched my other interviews, which I'm sure you haven't had time for, no.
I watched a little bit of one, but not enough to know.
Okay. Why do you think they would go unreported?
Maybe because the injury, like I said, maybe it's because they believe the injury has happened from something that wasn't actually, from, the extreme pressure that they're putting themselves under for music. Again, maybe using a keyboard for long hours of a day, or, bad posture with not just like your back, but like your hands, your wrists.
Musicians not realizing that it's music that's injured them. This could be because they're so focused on trying to play, trying to get the timing, the fingering, the technique and all that they don't even notice the discomfort until sometime after they've stopped playing and have unwound a bit.
That's possible. Yeah. I mean, I think probably more often than not, it's probably a feeling of just thinking it's natural, like that feeling, because like there are feelings like that, those burning sensations of your muscles building and stuff like that. Those are like feeling, maybe mild soreness because you've done a lot of work, those are the signs that your body is, breaking down and rebuilding, kind of like if you're exercising. But I think it could be, I think it could be any number of things, but those would probably be my guess as to the most likely for things like that.
Everybody's got a different answer for this, and it's actually, there are many risk factors. Maybe, I think I've got a list of 12 to 15 risk factors, and different people will put them in different orders, so it's very difficult to actually judge this. And maybe it's down to the psychology of the individual. Some people are going to be more affected by peer pressures than other people.
Oh yeah.
Particularly in university, some people might hear how much practice somebody else is doing and think, I need to catch up with them. Whereas other people might think, actually, I'm doing fine just the way I am. Do you think that there's a gap in the education system?
Yes. However, I'm struggling to find what I would do differently. Like where would you be able to consistently, like, again, without giving a student too much information, so that they just get, overwhelmed. At least in college, it was nice to. We would have these Wednesday meetings where the entire music department would come together. And for the first half of every semester, there'd be people who come in and talk about things, and it might be like, this is an arch lute, but every once in a while there would be kind of somebody that would come in and say, like, talk about these kind of things, injury prevention, or people who sadly had injuries, and what they want to teach other people so that the same thing doesn't happen to them and stuff.
How important do you think it is that teachers understand the workings of the body and have some knowledge of physiology and injuries and prevention and treatment, things like that?
I think it ultimately depends on what the student's looking for from the teacher, but I think I would initially say absolutely crucial, right? Because you want to teach these things to a student who, in a way that's not going to hurt them, and so that they can be aware of the dangers of how things can hurt them. But it's so tough when you're tasked already with, trying to teach students something, completely new for them, and even just like, trying to teach them how to do a scale or something, is so much of their brain power needs to be put into, first this finger has to go here, and then the next finger has to go there. Already just with the information that, you're giving them, you're already at like capacity. So then if you're going to start throwing all of these things and, oh, and by the way, make sure you don't hyperextend your finger. And, oh, by the way, make sure you have good arches. And by the way, make sure, it's like you kind of want to just be like, okay, do your best and let's kind of chisel away at that. And then hopefully at some point in that chiseling away, you say like, okay, remember that time that, your finger like caved in and bent? Like, that's a good example of what not to do. Let's look at a good example of something that's going to, hopefully keep your fingers working very well for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it can be very difficult to find that balance between not enough information and too much information, and how much you can put into the amount of time that you've got in a lesson.